Hello and welcome to my first ever YouTube video. I'm Sammy and this is Digs and Moves. On my channel, my ultimate goal is to help you become a better home cook. Here you can find videos where I take recipes that I find online, on Pinterest, in cookbooks, in magazines, wherever. I make them for you and then I review them at the end so you can find out if it's something you'd like to make as well. I also will be making videos with my own recipes or just some random things that I throw together so that you can learn how to create anything you want to create. The base recipe I'm using today, I found on 2 peas in their pod, and then I actually changed it in a few ways to make it my own and make it something that I wanted to do. I will be making a double chocolate chip banana bread that I just love this banana bread. I have made variations of it for over a year. I made it a lot in college. It's just the perfect recipe. So you can have something for breakfast, you can have it for dessert, or just a snack during the day. It is perfect. It is a healthy banana bread. It can easily be made vegan. It can be made gluten-free. Whatever you want, you can make it your own. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all the videos I make. Without further ado, let's get started. What you want to do is first wash your hands, clean your counter, and preheat your oven. Because if you just preheat it right when it hits that temperature you throw your food in, what it's going to do is it's going to drop temperature drastically and it's not going to bake correctly. So what you want to do, preheat it way ahead of time so that it's already way high up and it doesn't mess with the temperature when you do actually open it later. Your second step with any recipe you find is you want to read through the entire recipe. A lot of times, just like, I don't know if you remember in science class, if you were in a lab, you are supposed to read the whole list of instructions before you actually start so that you know what's coming next and nothing is thrown at you and you mess up and you were supposed to put it in that bowl but you put it in this bowl or whatever. So always, always, always read through your entire recipe before starting. Next, I like to do, and what's very recommended, is what's called Mezone Flaws, or I don't know how to pronounce it, I'm not French, but ultimately what it means is just have everything in its place. So if you ever watch those cooking videos on BuzzFeed or whatever, they always just quickly throw in the ingredients and it just looks all so organized. That's what you want to do. So what that means for you is before you start cooking, you get everything sorted out and measured and put in their own little separate bowls so that once it's time to actually combine everything, you can just quickly do it. Just make sure you know what's in what bowl. Next, wash your hands again, get everything clean, and it is time to start. For this recipe, it says heat your oven to 350. I started that a while ago. Then you want to prepare your pan. First, what you want to do is I like to take my loaf tin and then also have some tissue paper so that it's easy to pull out once the bread's done. So what I'm gonna do is I have this little square of tissue paper and I'm measuring it based on the size of the tin. So I start one side right at the edge right there, see where it ends on the other side, and I'm just gonna cut that. So it fits perfectly right in my tin. Next, what you want to do is grease the tin and then stick your tissue paper in, and then you can quickly go over that again so it easily comes in and out. The paper can be wiped off or taken off really easily, and it's just super simple, really great way to line most of your baking tins. So let me grab my spray. So this is a clean pan. Another thing, always make sure all your stuff is clean because that's just gross if it's not. So clean your ish. Nice light spray to cover it. And then I just set it in, press the corners down. That way it sticks nice and easily because you already sprayed it. And then give it a little bit of a spray again, and you are good to go. Hopefully no one walks there. Have you ever seen those videos where they spray the floor and then someone runs by and slips? That's gonna happen. Sorry, family. All right. Like I said, this recipe is started out vegan, and I made a few adjustments so it's not. However, I'm still using a flax egg. So in order to do that, it's a great egg replacement. What you do is you take ground flax meal, so flax seeds, put it in a coffee grinder, or you can just buy the flax meal as it is, and then mix it with a little bit of water. I've seen different recipes where it's 1 tablespoon to 3 tablespoons of water, or 1 tablespoon of flax to 2 tablespoons of water. I kind of did a little combination of the two, but basically it creates this nice wax or eggy consistency, and that is your egg replacement. This can also be used if you don't want to use flax meal, you can use an egg. However, I recommend reading through the recipe, reading through the comments or the notes at the end of the recipe to see if it says don't use a regular egg, or this hasn't worked with a regular egg, or only use egg white, whatever. Just read through the entire recipe, read through the notes, read through the comments, and see if those changes you want to make have already been tried and if they did or did not work. All right. Next, what you want to do is mash your ripe bananas, because this is banana bread. You're going to take, I like to get a little potato masher, take my ripe bananas, and by ripe, I mean ripe, like who would eat that type of ripe, where it is just covered in spots. And that's the best tip I can give you for banana bread, is make sure your bananas are ripe. So I've already mashed up my bananas. Next, you're gonna add coconut oil, and yeah, so you're gonna add your coconut oil. However, I don't really like to use oil as much in this recipe or in a lot of my recipes, just because it's oil. It's nothing against it, but it's high in calories, and I like to have this for breakfast, and so I much prefer to use oil replacements. So those replacements can be more mashed bananas, applesauce, any type of dairy product. There's actually a lot of replacements. So what I'm using today is just some Greek yogurt. I love that extra little protein, and the Greek yogurt makes it nice and rich and moist. Sorry, that's a disgusting word, but what are you gonna do? So adding the protein, or your Greek yogurt. So this was for this recipe, and I'll post the recipe below. It's 3 ripe bananas, or about 1.5 cups of mashed banana, and then 1/3 cup of oil or whatever replacement you want to use. So mix that together till it's nice and combined. All right, so nice and combined. And then it tells us to add in the coconut sugar, flaxseed mixture, and vanilla extract. So basically, first steps is with any recipe, you combine your wet ingredients together, and then you combine your dry ingredients separately. And then you add your dry ingredients to your wet ingredients. Why that's the order, I don't know. I'm sure there's a reason out there, but you always want to add your dry ingredients into your wet ingredients. All right, so coconut sugar, here's my flaxseed, which is your egg. So if you're not making this vegan, an egg should probably work. I can test that out for you if you're interested. Comment below if you want me to make this not vegan. All right, so that's the flax egg. Then for the coconut sugar, I actually like to cut down on the amount of sugar in my recipe when it's possible. So especially for this one, there's so much chocolate and it's so rich, you don't really need that extra kick of sugar. Plus, I like to coat my toast. I make it toasty, and I add almond butter, whatever you want, some fruit on top of it once it's baked, and it's perfect. So I cut down on the sugar. So this recipe calls for 3/4 cup of coconut sugar. However, I actually did 1/4 and 1/8 cup of coconut sugar, and then I did the rest of it with stevia. Stevia is a really, really great sugar replacement where it's got 0 calories, it's from a plant, it's all natural, and it's just the perfect way to add sweetness without the sugar, the extra sugar. All right, so mix that together. So I have combined those. Now I've got my little vanilla extract. I think it was a teaspoon of vanilla. I love vanilla. So I did about like a teaspoon and a half. I always go over on the vanilla. I personally, you can't go wrong with adding a little extra vanilla. There's that. It's about a teaspoon and a half of vanilla. One other thing that I forgot to mention is when I measured out my banana mixture, my mashed banana, it didn't come out to the amount that it's supposed to, which the recipe called for 1.5 cups of mashed banana or 3 large bananas. My bananas were a little smaller than normal, so I decided, okay, or smaller, not smaller than normal. They weren't like tiny little bananas. They're smaller than large. Medium bananas, let's say that. So I just measured it out really quickly to eyeball it, see, okay, is it in 1.5 cups? No, it was about like 1.25 cups maybe. So another little swap you can do if you don't have all the ingredients or you don't have enough of one ingredient is applesauce. I kind of used a combination of my replacements for oil, which oil can be replaced by bananas or applesauce. So what I did for a little extra sweetness, because I cut out a lot of the sugar, was I did the remaining 1/4 cup of the banana, I used applesauce. Moral of the story, you can make a lot of replacements for things that you don't have or don't want to use. There's so many options. All right, so combined all of these wet ingredients. I'm gonna set that aside. And next, take your flour, combine your flour. So this recipe called for gluten-free flour. However, they used a 1-to-1 ratio of gluten-free flour to regular flour. So I know that I can just use regular flour because it is that 1-to-1 ratio. If you're using something like coconut flour, almond flour, buckwheat flour, anything like that, there are different proportions comparative to regular flour. So always make sure that the flour you're using, if you're changing it to make it gluten-free or paleo, whatever, make sure that it is proportionate to regular flour. In this case, like I said, healthy banana bread. I love it for breakfast or just a snack, guilt-free. I actually used whole wheat flour. And again, that's a 1-to-1 ratio with regular all-purpose flour. So no extra measurements here, just 1 cup of regular flour. And then what it is it was, let me double check this. Okay, 1/2 cup of Dutch processed cocoa. There are a few different types of cocoa. Dutch processed is Dutch processed, different than just the regular Hershey's cocoa you find in the grocery store. This is found, I got this in the grocery store too, but it's labeled Dutch processed. And what it is it's got a different acidic level.
Acid level? Whatever the word is, I don't know.
But it's richer, it's got a much better flavor, especially when baking. So 1/2 cup of this Dutch processed cocoa. Again, if you don't have it, not a big deal. Use regular cocoa powder or cacao powder if you want. That all works. Whatever you have, you can make it happen. And I actually whisked together, or I didn't whisk, I actually sifted my cocoa powder because it had quite a few chunks in it. And so sifting isn't necessary. However, it does break up all those chunks and makes it nice and light and airy. All right, so I've got these together. I'm gonna grab a whisk. I'm gonna whisk it all together. All right, next what I'm gonna do is I've got my baking soda. Nice, already measured out. Teaspoon of baking soda. And then I've got a little 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt. With salt, that's another thing to mention, is kosher salt. If you see a recipe that mentions using kosher salt or asks for you to use kosher salt, that's something that's got a much stronger flavor, so you need less of that kosher salt than you would for normal table salt or sea salt. All right, so you've got that all combined. Now, like I said, you're gonna combine your dry ingredients into your wet ingredients. And then what you want to do is stir nice and gently, because when you're working with flour, you can over stir it where it ultimately becomes nice and tough. Not nice. Let's just say that. It's not nice. So be very gentle, and what you want to do is stir it just until it's incorporated. There's no need to overmix. And this is the case with almost every baked good that uses flour, is you never want to overmix it. As soon as if you have your wet ingredients, you can beat those things typically till the sun goes down. But as soon as you add your flour, you want to be very mindful of not overmixing it. All right, just until it's incorporated. So there is the mixture. Yummy. Good news about this not using, well, never mind, I'm not gonna say that. I eat some of the batter. Technically raw flour is still raw. So it's not just the egg, raw egg, that you need to be mindful of when eating batter or cookie dough or anything. It's actually because of the flour in it that's not baked, which can make you sick. But if you're using gluten-free flour, go right ahead. Next, like I said, it is double chocolate chip, double chocolate, extra chocolate, banana bread. So you need your chocolate chips. I am using vegan chocolate chips just to show you how easy it is to make this vegan. You can use regular chocolate chips or no chocolate chips at all. I personally am obsessed with chocolate. I have to have chocolate at least once a day. So definitely adding lots of chocolate chips in this. The recipe had a certain amount that it called for, but I never measure out the chocolate chips I put in my ingredients or in my recipes. There's just no point. I know I'm always gonna want more, so I just put in as much as I see fit to where every bite will have a little bit of chocolate in it. Perfect. Again, don't overmix it. And your pan's already prepared, so you can nice and easily just pour this in. So I've got all the batter in the pan. In one of my cooking classes, my teacher told us always make sure you scrape the pan till it is practically clean, because there's a certain amount of ingredients for a recipe for a reason, and there's a time required for baking and everything, and so you always want to make sure you get as much of the batter into the pan as possible. So I kind of listen to her, but I also like to leave a little bit of a treat for me. I'm not condoning eating batter. I'm condoning it for myself. To each his own. All right, next I'm gonna add a little extra chocolate on top. Not only does that make it nice and pretty and it looks super, super inviting, but more chocolate, the better. So I like to sprinkle a little bit on top. So, and you can also add whatever you want to this recipe. If you want to add nuts, some dried fruit. I'd be careful adding fresh fruit because that will affect the turnout, because there is all that moisture in fresh fruit. So always be mindful when you add fresh fruit to an ingredient, to a recipe. It will usually alter the outcome. All right, lots of chocolate chips. You can add coconut, you can add a sliced banana on top. I've done that a lot. It just makes it look really cool. Whatever you want. All right, this is ready to go in. It stays in for about 65 minutes. So set your timer, make sure your oven is set, your oven rack is set in the center of your oven so that it cooks properly. And if it's too high, the top will bake while the bottom doesn't, and vice versa. So always make sure your oven rack is placed in the center unless specified otherwise. Again, read the entire recipe before you start baking so that you always know what's coming next, how to prepare, what to do. Again, with that, read the notes. A lot of times bloggers, especially on Pinterest, will add recipe notes at the bottom of everything, and that gives such good tips on what they recommend for the recipe. All right, so I'm gonna put this in and I will catch you later. Okay, and we're back. I just took the bread out of the oven about 10 minutes ago, let it cool a little bit. So I want to show you how easy it is to take it out of the pan with this little tissue baking sheet trick. So with that, just kind of run the knife along the edges on the outside of the paper right here. And then it's as easy as grabbing these little handles that you made for yourself and popping it out. So if you can see, we just have this beautiful loaf of chocolate, double chocolate chip banana bread. It smells so good. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and try a little bit of this and let you guys know how it turned out. My dog wants some. I guess that says something. Perfect. Perfect snack, perfect breakfast, perfect dessert. Yeah, I approve. Well, I'm Sammy, and thank you so much for watching today. If you like this video, please be sure to like the video, comment below if you have any questions, have recipes you want me to try, and please, please, please hit that subscribe button and hit that little notification bell next to it if you want to find out exactly when I post new videos. Thank you so much for watching. I've just done like 10 takes by now. This is hard! Videos to teach you, oh my gosh. Goes. Ah, gosh, this is so hard. Are you listening? The goal